afternoon. Welcome back to By Any Greens Necessary. I'm your host, Melvin Thompson. I'm the Executive Director of the Endeleo Institute. Endeleo is Swahili for Progress, Growth, and Development. We are the nonprofit arm of Trinity United Church of Christ, located in the beautiful Washington Heights community. We're located at 400 West 95th Street. That's where Trinity United Church of Christ has been since 1961, and we're excited to have another week to talk to you about our By Any Greens Necessary farmers market, Trinity Community Farmers Market, right across the street at the corner of 95th and Normal. This will be week 3 that we're heading into. We're having a wonderful time thus far. Great turnouts the past weeks. Kind of warm, but still well attended. We're still giving away those green shopping bags. Is that right, T? We're still giving those away? Okay, first 50 people to come in will get a green reusable shopping bag, so you don't have to worry about carrying around plastic bags or anything. It's environmentally better for you to do this, and so we're happy to accommodate and provide this and put really good healthy food inside of those bags. So come on out. We're just getting, in our flow, in our rhythm. Our farmers are really showing out. Last week we had blueberries everywhere. Everywhere you looked, blueberries are in season, and so we had a number of farmers selling that. Our call-in number today, if you have questions about anything that I mentioned today or just a comment, give us a call at 312-738-1060. That's 312-738-1060. So a few things to talk about. You know I'm always talking about the corridor revitalization in Washington Heights. We had a splendid community meeting yesterday at the Woodson, at the newly restored Woodson Library, where we had a number of community residents and business owners, students come out and just discuss their vision and what this whole revitalization thing is all about, and just in general, Washington Heights. Washington Heights kind of flies under the radar in Chicago. Not many people know exactly where we are. Many of them confuse us with Washington Park. We're not in Washington Park. We're on South 95th Street. We're not on 55th Street. That's a completely different area. And so it's time that we, while we're doing this revitalization, while the library is new and improved, we want to bring new light to a wonderful, stable, predominantly African American community that just happens to be on the far south side of Chicago. We have a number of amenities, and I think a lot of the positive things that are going on in Washington Heights were expressed last night, along with some concerns and some things, safety and violence and the things that are happening, the lack of businesses. It all mixes together, but I think together it creates a really strong community. And so we want to capitalize on the things that are there, improve the things that are not conducive to a healthy neighborhood, and just have one of those vibrant neighborhoods. And so we heard from community residents loud and clear. That was the first session that we're going to have. The next session will be more focused around neighborhood development. In other words, what would folks like to see around the 95th Street corridor, along the 95th Street corridor, particularly around the new ongoing renovation of the Red Line, the CTA Red Line, which is undergoing, as many of you know, a $300 million renovation. So that's huge. I mean, that's, I don't know if there are any bigger investments that CTA has made in recent history of that magnitude at a single train station, other than maybe downtown Union Station or something like that. But nonetheless, it's very significant. From one of the residents I learned, I believe there's going to be 3 vendors inside of the station. We're certainly going to be talking to CTA over the next couple of weeks to kind of find out the details of what that's going to look like now that they've gotten the south terminal pretty much completed, and now they're working on the north terminal. So we're really excited. I mean, that transportation is everything, access to other places, and just reliable, safe transportation is critical. And so to see our station in Washington Heights get a makeover, so to speak, of this magnitude is absolutely huge. And so we want to see some complementary things and stores and housing and development in general go with those places and go with that station. And so we're really excited about what the future holds over the next short term, midterm, and long term in Washington Heights. And again, the catalyst is a wonderful regional library at the west end of 95th and Halsted, and then over east, just a mile east, is that wonderful new station that we're going to unveil probably. I think they're going to unveil it probably in its entirety sometime in 2019. So it's an interesting time. I heard a number of different things about college town, turning 95th Street into a college town because of the presence of Chicago State University, which is an excellent thought and idea that we should certainly look into and pursue and see what the viability of actually transforming the corridor into a college town or a college feel that kind of reintroduces Chicago State to the adjoining neighborhoods, Burnside, Calumet Heights, Roseland, Washington Heights. It's a huge opportunity. And I had a chance last week, actually, to meet the new president, President Z. Scott. She's phenomenal. She's full of energy, and she is talking about changes. And one of the things that I was struck by was what she talked about in terms of the things that are on campus that are located within the campus that a lot of people don't know about, a lot of scientific research equipment that are just state of the art, that most of the community has no clue is actually there. So it's a huge opportunity from an asset-based community development strategy standpoint, which is what we believe in, to take assets that are already there and improve them and kind of shine them up a little bit. And that's what Chicago State is. It's a real gem. So, that was one of the things that came out of the meeting yesterday, that, Chicago State has, kind of laid dormant for so many years. And when is it going to actually, realize a heyday where, people from our community can go to an affordable college, where, that has a really deep history. A lot of our Chicago public school teachers came from that school when Chicago State was Chicago Teachers College. A lot of people don't realize that. My mom is a perfect example, went there, got her master's degree and became a teacher because of Chicago State. And so a lot of rich history, and now it's time to write a new history there. And so a lot of our young people don't know, and I think Chicago State has been, relatively, relegated as a commuter school for many years. And I think that there's opportunities in and around the campus for it to be, a UIC, a University of Chicago. I mean, it has that, that presence and the amenities. I know for a fact that the College of Pharmacy is outstanding, and because you've heard me talk about the pharmacy deserts that we are experiencing in our community, where we've lost at least 3 Walgreens pharmacies in our community, one at the corner of 95th and King Drive, which is cat-a-corner from the university. We lost one in Washington Heights at 95th and Halsted, and then we lost one at 87th and Ashland in the Auburn Gresham neighborhood. And so this is critical. I mean, this is something that shouldn't be flying below the radar. This is a critical issue, particularly in a senior rich African American community that's reliant on its medication access to medication, and just the whole adherence to medication. The whole fact that, it's difficult to get people to actually take the medication, and now you give them excuse that, okay, it's not in my community anymore. I can't walk there. I don't have a car. I can't send my grandchild or my children to go that far. It's dangerous and all of these things. And that contributes to an unhealthy neighborhood. And so, it's a very complex, it's nothing light to make of any of these things. They're all interconnected and complex. And so we have to deal with this from a comprehensive standpoint. And so that's why revitalizing the corridor is not just about making things nice and pretty and shiny. It's really about the utility of a corridor and a neighborhood, because oftentimes, if you drive through any neighborhood, the corridor tends to reflect the interconnected neighborhoods. And so if you see a neighborhood that's really prosperous, typically the corridor reflects it. And the interesting thing about Washington Heights is that we've got one of the highest home ownership rates in the entire city of Chicago. I say that every week. I'll say it until, someone recognizes it. But the corridors don't reflect that high home ownership rate. And supposedly, retail follows the rooftops. And we haven't seen that manifest in Washington Heights. And so we've got some theories why that doesn't exist, and we're going to deal with that. It's no secret that, economic development tends to leapfrog, black communities. And so we are adamant. There's an election coming up. And so we want to be heard, not just because people are running for office, but you tend to get more ears perked up because people want to stay in office. And I would challenge the voting population to look at your condition and look at your situation and ask yourself, are people speaking to your situation? Is your economic situation satisfactory to the point where you're comfortable with the people that are in office right now? Do you feel safe that the people who are supposed to be protecting you are protecting you? Is healthy food in your community? Are your schools decent? Are your schools open? I guess that should be the better question. So, a lot of complexities to talk about. But, Endeleo is just but one viable, strong organization that's starting to make a lot of headway in the community. We're starting to get recognized. People are even pronouncing our name right. So that's pretty cool. As I've mentioned to you, we have a partnership with the Cook County Land Bank. And just yesterday, they celebrated their 5th year in operation. And we were invited, and we had a great time. The commissioner, Bridget Gaynor, was there on hand. She is the architect and the genius behind the land bank. And President Preckwinkle was there. The executive director, Rob Rose, who we worked with closely, was there. And we were surprised to learn that we were the nonprofit community developer of the year for 2018. So we are ecstatic about it. We got a trophy to prove it. I didn't bring it with me. I didn't want to gloat or anything like that. But it is an outstanding indication that we're doing the right things, that we're making housing available for people who can afford it. But better than that, the housing is superior. The housing is excellent. It is energy efficient. Some may call it luxury housing, but it is really amenity rich. And so we're really excited about the work we're doing, and that the land bank is providing these opportunities to acquire properties in our neighborhood that threaten the deterioration of the neighborhood by them being vacant. So there's nothing like, one vacant house on a block, and then all of a sudden you see a second vacant house, and then a third, and now all of a sudden you've got vagrancy, you've got deterioration, you've got folks hanging out, you've got broken windows, you have all of these things, trash, and all of these kind of things that, it's just idle behavior that you see in and around these areas. And so for a stable area like Washington Heights, you really want to keep that area stable, particularly in an aging community like we have. I've mentioned a couple of times that we have the highest median age in our community in the city of Chicago and Cook County. I think the age is 43, and that is a mark of stability, but it also, in terms of future, is a possible threat, because people are moving on, they're transitioning in life, they're dying, and these homes aren't being passed on to folks in the family. And so, at least not to a degree that's comfortable enough where we're seeing a succession period where folks are actually moving in and transitioning to other places. In fact, we've been approached by a number of younger people who have elder parents who have since moved in with them, and so the houses that they once occupied for 50, 60 years are now vacant. And so, and oftentimes these homes are paid for, but they need upkeep and maintenance. And so we're working with a number of different residents from that community, the offspring of owners who used to live there. And this is a wonderful opportunity that we really did not anticipate, but it is a blessing. And so we're going to be aggressive in getting the word out now that we've got this shiny new award, that we're doing this wonderful work, and that if there are people that are in the community that are in that situation where they have a parent or a loved one that's experiencing maybe possibly dementia. You've heard me talk about memory loss and how that's impacting people's ability to stay in their own homes now. That is a huge issue in our community. And so that may be a factor in the ability to stay in your home if there is not a caregiver or someone that can devote the time to be with someone practically 24 hours a day. So it's funny how the interconnectedness of all of these things, connect to community. And so an Endeleo is a necessary entity to address health, education, and community development. We've talked about the fact that we also have an education arm that is doing wonderful work with a new Upward Bound grant. That's a 5-year grant that we have from the U.S. Department of Education to impart college and career readiness to first-generation students. And when I say first generation, that's typical of a young person who doesn't have a parent in the home that has attended college or graduated from college. And so that particular student becomes the first to matriculate and graduate from a university. And with that comes a lot. They don't have anyone in their family to turn to and say, what's my first year as a freshman in college like? What's the transition? What are the growing pains? They're typically left to their own devices to kind of figure that out. And that's where we come in with college tours, college fairs. We focus a lot on historically black colleges and universities. We've done that for decades at Trinity, and we've really taken that because we love that as an option, particularly for first generation students who can be shell-shocked by the culture of going to maybe a large white institution where it's kind of impersonal. Maybe there are 20 or 30,000 students, and it's really hard to navigate and concentrate, you get homesick, you get lonely, you don't have a lot of places to turn, and there's not a lot of on-campus, one-on-one, where at an HBCU, there are people that look like you, that have been through what you're going through, and even if this is you're a first generation student, there may be other first generation students on that campus as well, and it's just a different cultural vibe. And so that's why we focus so much on historically black colleges. It's nothing to say that a traditionally white institution would not be appropriate, but from a cost standpoint, that can be a factor from going to a historically black college. And honestly, we really encourage young graduates of HBCUs to go on to graduate school and then come back to the community and contribute what you've learned at those schools and universities, and come back to the community. That's one of the reasons why I've become a huge LeBron James fan, because of his willingness to come back at least for a little bit to his hometown and give back and make a huge economic impact. And you don't have to be a multi-million-dollar basketball player to be able to do that. You can be just a regular college graduate that does well, in the corporate life and want to give back, because every little bit helps. I was at a community breakfast at Captain Hard Times earlier today on 79th Street, and heard a bevy of young people talk about what they want to be and what they aspire to be, at 18, 19 years old, and it was really inspiring to hear that, amidst all the things that you're hearing that are negative, that there's some young people that are still laser focused on doing some really important things. One young sister talked about, being an astronomer. Talking about stars, and, being a psychologist and all of these different things, electrical engineers, mechanical and civic engineers. That is just, that, did I say civil engineers? I'm sorry. But it was just heartwarming to hear that kind of talk. And so I was very encouraging to those young people. And I was, very thankful that one of the folks that came to our event last night at Woodson invited me to this breakfast this morning. The breakfast was delicious, by the way. So you should go to Captain Hard Times and support them. But just to hear a group of young people on a summer Sunday morning, espousing to be these things that you typically don't see in our community. So, that's it. That's pretty much it in a nutshell. We are, I always like to promote our farmers market every Saturday between July and September, from 8 o'clock in the morning to 1 p.m. Black farmers from Pembroke, Illinois. We support them fully. I think we have five farmers that we have now? Yep, five solid farmers from Pembroke, Illinois, that are coming. We typically have more, but I talked about that transition and how a number of them, are getting to that age where they're starting to not be able to, transport as well. And so we're seeing a new generation of farmers, which is very, very encouraging. So it's exciting to see, and we really want to be a part of this new generation of harvesting and cultivating a whole new generation of young farmers, because they're bringing the technology. They're telling me about, Melvin, there's apps that, can determine, where rain will be heaviest, and crops will do, much better, over a season. And where does that come from? How, drones and all these, these technological things that can help, produce better crops. This should be supported. And so we're hopeful, going forward that, funders will certainly see that we're cultivating this new generation of young people who, are rooted, and their ancestry and their history is rooted in this kind of thing. And so, we've gotten away from that for the most part, and this is really the soil of the earth. We're talking about a holistic way to live, growing things that, come from the earth and not from, Jewel or any of these superstores. Things that come from the earth and actually growing them. I know our director of education is doing some wonderful growing towers at the library. So the next time you get a chance to come by Trinity or the Woodson Library, you will see these new technological growing trees that are actually growing plants and fruit, and will be harvested in the next, I believe, 6 weeks. So that's exciting. So we got a ton of stuff going on in the community. I talked about the land bank, the affordable housing. If you're ever wanting to know about what we're doing in the community, just dial 188 Endeleo. That's 188 Endeleo, and we will see you next time right here on By Any Greens Necessary. I'm your host, Melvin Thompson. Take care, and we'll see you soon.